So in the last class, we had finished the verse number, the sutra number 7, which was that, we started with the Udyama Bhairavaha. That was the fifth sutra. And then the sixth and the seventh. In the seventh one, what we had dealt with was, and how do you start this whole uh, process of meditation on the self? So he's saying that you reach a state where irrespective of the conditionalities associated with any particular state, like waking state or dream state or dreamless sleep state, these are conditional experience of certain objects and certain experiences you undergo. And he's saying, Jagrata Swapna Susupta Vede Turya Bhoga Sambhavaha. So what he was trying to say there is that you have these three states. However, these states which are different from each other. What is waking state? When you are able to experience the external world through some sort of a sense perception, or you are engaging with the external world. And in the dream state, you are just meditating within yourself because there is no real world. You are in an imaginary world of your own. And in deep sleep state, even that is gone. He's saying that these three states can be experienced if there is something which doesn't undergo any changes. And that is that fourth state, or that pure consciousness, or Sakshi Chaitanya, whatever is mentioned in Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta. They are also talking about a Turiya state here. But they do not only talk about a fourth state in Kashmiri Shaivism, they also refer to a fifth state called Turiyatita. There are basically three states: Jagrata, Swapna, and Susupti, because Atma is Panchokoshatita. Therefore, the self abides in a state which is not limited by the conditions associated with waking, dreaming, or deep sleep states. It's beyond that. Panchokoshatitaha. There are no upadhis, no limitations, no conditionalities associated. Now, the Sakshi Chaitanya there is a pure witness. It doesn't do anything. It experiences. And what are the proof? Because even in deep sleep state, where there is nothing evident in your mind, when you wake up, you are able to say, I don't know anything, I had a very good sleep. And that is what they are using to explain that there must be an experiencer. Otherwise, how is it possible for us to refer to the experience as pleasant, that we had a good sleep? If there was no anubhava, if there was no experience, how can you qualify or describe that experience after you wake up? That was the point that they were mentioning. However, here they are saying Turya Bhoga Sambhavaha. To the fourth state, that Abhoga. Abhoga is a kind of chamatkar, is a joyous, rapturous thing, experience of the self. See the subtle difference between the Vedantic notion of the self as a state of luminous equanimity. Sachidananda Swarupa, Ananda is there, but that Ananda is not dynamic. That Ananda is not static or dynamic. It's not. So this is neither Sat nor Asat, is beyond. It's beyond everything. Here, however, in Kashmiri Shaivism, they are saying no. That is a rapturous, joyous state of self-consciousness. Because here we are not Advaita Vedantis like them. The Brahman is Nirguna, Nirakara, Niskriya. No. The Parama Shiva is static and dynamic at the same time. It's luminous, it's vibrant. And therefore, he creates this whole samsara without depending on any external or avidya, maya. These concepts are subordinate to Shiva. He's supreme, absolutely. So in that fourth state that we had a lot of discussion there as to how this particular thing fructifies. That fourth state was that ever present, which is present in all three states: waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. It's there always, and that fourth state is the real self. These three states are sopadhika. The fourth one is beyond upadhis, without limitation and constraints, with the help of which that ever present consciousness, that immortal Atma, we experience this samsara, including our own consciousness and its different states. Consciousness can be referred to in two ways. One is that pure consciousness, the other one is a state of functioning of the brain. The Western notion of consciousness, as some people are defining it, they use a term called qualia. They are trying to refer to the brain and consciousness as an emergence in the brain. It is associated with the brain. No brain, no consciousness. And then there is some consciousness which we in the Vedanta use, that consciousness is the beginning of this whole samsara. Unlike the Western perspective, where consciousness is a manifestation at a much later state of evolution. First, you have different material manifestations, and then at some point of time, consciousness manifests as the brain develops. There is a ego sense, and all other things are developing in a very refined and a very objective way so that we can talk about it. But we are not talking about consciousness in that sense. We're talking about consciousness is much more real and holistic, which is independent of our physical, emotional, logical, including sleep states. Right? So that particular thing is possible. That much he said in that fourth state. That is the Turiya state. Now the question you would ask, normally anybody will ask, I'm not further going into it. We have already discussed that the Sambhavapaya, which is the first chapter of the Shiva Sutras, is meant for very advanced students of this process of sadhana, the advanced practitioners who are much evolved, because what he's saying that you get that uchchalanatmaka, unmajana, unmajjana, sudden appearance. I was giving that metaphor, is a huge well suddenly appearing out of nowhere on the sea surface. And you get into water, you're coming out of it, you emerge out of it. The udyantrita. So that particular thing, when it happens, unmesha happens, the sansara happens, materialization of the whole creation appears. Out of where? Out of a certain vibration in the consciousness. Suddenly, and so far the Advaita Vedanta and the Upanishad is concerned, they will say it was avyakrita, became vyakrita. It was unmanifest, became manifest. Why it became manifest? Because we are ignorant. So everything is subject dependent, because in reality, there is only one undefinable reality, which is pure consciousness. Everything else is an appearance. Here, nothing is an appearance. All of this is real. We are not going to reject it, but we want to reconnect with that highest state of consciousness by making sense of all this as a inverted manifestation because of Leela of Paramashiva, that Paramatattva, with his own Swatyantya Sakti that we have done already, Jnanam Bandha, and then Chaitanya Mahatma and Jnanam Bandha, we have done with both the aspects. Now he's saying, if this is what you are trying to say, then you try to explain to me, then what is this Jagrat Avastha, what is this Swapna Avastha, and what is this Susupti Avastha, because you're talking about a fourth state. Therefore, we have three sutras, 8th, 8th, 9th, and 10th, dealing with these three states, which is also dealt in the Mandvika Upanishad. So, this is called Avastatraya Viveka in Vedanta. What is he saying? The verse number 8 says, Jnanam Jagrata. Earlier, do you remember the Jnana Sabda has Jnanam Bandhaha? Earlier, knowledge is differentiated from pure consciousness is bandhakaraka, jnanam bandhaha. Then we had also discussed that Chaitanyam Atma, if you put that together, Chaitanyam Atma, Jnanam Bandhaha, that means Chaitanyam Atma, Ajnanam Bandhaha, we can understand like this. So Jnanam and is Ajnana, that knowledge which is not telling us about our Swarupa, which is telling us about this differentiated, fragmented reality and is tying us up. We are being misled away from our pure nature. That kind of knowledge is bandhakaraka. Like, for example, in Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavan said, karma per se is not bad. Karma is called karma only when there is a karta. And karta will be there if there is ahankara, if there is a kartitva buddhi. And to have kartitva buddhi, you have to reduce your Sachidananda Swarupa to a limited entity called the individual with the ego sense. And once we have engineered this, we have accepted this self limitation, then whatever you do becomes karma, and karma is bandhakara. Same karma becomes buddhi yoga, or nishkama karma becomes prabriti marga, the buddhi yoga, nishkama karma yoga, ishwara arpana buddhya. If we do, that particular karma will not trouble us. On the other hand, this karma will help us in purifying our mind, our consciousness, our svabhava, everything. And therefore, it is able to lift us to the next spiritual state where we are capable of doing upasanas. And by doing upasanas, we become a kritopasti, somebody who has done a lot of upasanas. So we are now preparing the ground for a higher state of engagement with this truth through vichara. So first, kamya karma you have to renounce, as we studied in the Viveka Chudamani. Kamya, say goodbye from a distance. And then do nitya karma. And whatever you are doing, you are now withdrawing your sense of the agency that I am doing. How will you do without agency? You will do everything with a lot of attention, but without a lower level of involvement, which is egoistic in nature, without having any craving for the results thereof. So it's very easy to say, it's not very easy to practice. I tell you what is the first challenge. After all these Bhagavad Gita or Upanishads or Shiva Sutras, whatever, when you enter into any workplace, how do you handle a guy who is trying to trouble you, undercut you in a meeting, show you in a bad light? The game starts. The only answer, now this question is asked to a lot of, I do face it from other students. What do you tell them? The simple sutra which Bhagavan has given us, that look here, all this suddenly overpowers you, overwhelms you only because you have allowed that ego sense to take the center stage. If the ego sense doesn't take the center stage, you will be able to deal with all this. And yet you will not feel any stress, because your ultimate destination is not to engage in battles with others for smaller victories, but for complete the war game with yourself and your prarabdha for a much larger victory called vairagya, where you are winning over your low level inclinations and you are readying yourself for Shravana Manana and Nididhyasana. That is what Bhagavan has told us in Bhagavad Gita. And if you are able to do that, you do it. Doesn't mean you will not respond, but you will not react, because reaction is something with a sense of attachment and response with a sense of discrimination. You can still engage with the world, but without forgetting your Swarupa. You will engage, because at the end of the day, Arjuna had to fight a war. Now, here now in Shiva Sutra, we are discussing about these three states, Jagrat, Swapna, and Susutti, so that we understand how that fourth element called Turiyavastha is the witness and also the enjoyer. It's that state, that is your Swarupa. So in order to make sense of it, he mentions first one is Jnanam Jagrata. So I had to go on a digression in order to put it in a context. We have already read that sutra called Jnanam Bandha. So Jnanam Jagrata, Swapna Vikalapaha. We look at each of them one by one. So Sankalpa Vikalpatmakam Manaha. In the dream state, the Bahya Indriyas have been put to sleep. Somebody is playing your most favorite song when you are in a sleep state. You can't listen to it. You will not be able to enjoy it. It's playing next to you, but you don't get it. Your favorite dish is right there on the stool next to your bed. Your mom, sister, wife, friend, somebody keeps that particular recipe for you in a half sleep state. You say, yeah, I will have it. This is dessert you wanted. Yeah, it's there. Just keep it. I'll have it. I'll wake up just a little tired. And that dessert is just there and you don't care for it. You're sleeping. You had ordered for it. And then you wake up at 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the middle of the night and you say, oh my God, what is this? Okay, this is what I had asked for. And you remember it. It was there, you are not being able to accept it. And the person who you hate most may be lying next to you in a marriage party, you have no problem because you don't know he is there. So you're not accepting these senses. What are you experiencing? You're watching a cricket match. Where? On your bed. Is there any cricket match going on? No, but you're enjoying it. In your dream, Vikalapaha, self-created world that you're engaging with. Aviveko maya sausuptam. Without any vichara, they are using the words. The word which is used in Advaita Vedanta parlance is actually layavastha. There's a complete, it's like a sleep mode. You're folding that computer screen, the laptop. All things get into the sleep mode. Then there's no activity whatsoever in the sleep mode. When you wake the computer up, slowly all the programs get reactivated. Takes a few seconds depending on how good is your computer. So similarly, when we wake up into the Jagrat Avastha, all our memories, our sanskaras, our all the operating system and all other folders, the program folders, they get reactivated. Person who was lying next to you, a cousin with whom you had an argument, but you're lying in the same room, you're sharing it, it's a marriage party. When you wake up, you resume the quarrel or the fight. Then you are sleeping in the same bed, one little boy, one little sister, cousins or siblings. They had a good fight. They fell asleep. Mom puts them in the same bed. And in the morning, they wake up, they resume their fight. The game will start again. But in the deep sleep, no, they don't know anything. That aviveka maya susuptam. That is how he's defining it. Okay? Now, let's go one by one. Jagrat is, what he's saying is, what is that Jagrat Avastha? Sarva Sadharana Artha Vishayam Bahya Indriyajam Jnanam Lokasya Jagrata Jagaravastha Sarva Sadharana Artha Vishayam. Why is he using Sarva Sadharana Artha? Sarva Sadharana Artha. Make sense of it. What your brother is dreaming, you are not dreaming. In the room, maybe you, your brother, and your sister, direct brother, sister, or cousins these days because families are smaller. So you three are lying down in the same room. You'll wake up and go to school, and then three of you are seeing dreams. And when you wake up in the morning, you're sharing your dreams. One of you was on a picnic party. The other one was playing music, and the third one was moving around in a very ancient temple. Depending on your own sanskaras and your vasanas, you have seen your dreams and you share. Okay. So what he's saying is Sarva Sadharanartha Vishayam Bahendriyajam. First thing, whatever you are experiencing, that is a product. You achieve that knowledge, that artha, you have that sambandha through what is Sarva Sadharanartha. What is Sarva Sadharana here? It is intersubjective. In the waking state, there's an apple. There's an orange, there's a banana on the table. When you siblings wake up, you're looking at them. You are seeing an apple and an orange and a banana. Your sister does that, and your other cousin brother does that. Similarity, there's not a problem. But when you are sleeping, you are seeing that on the table, there is maybe a peacock sitting there. And your cousin brother sees that, no, there is a parrot over there. And your sister, maybe she is seeing a dinosaur in the room. You're seeing different. So there is no sadharana artha. This is not intersubjective. It's unique to the different experiencer, the dream avastha. Okay? Lokasya jagra jagaravastha. That is the small thing. And what is that swapna avastha? He's saying, ye tu manomatra janya asadharanartha vishaya vikalpaha, not sadharana. It's very unique to every individual who is in a dream state. Manomatra janya. Why? Because other bahya indriyas, whether it is karmendriyas or jnanendriyas, all 10 can be used in Jagrata Avastha. You can walk around. Of course, there is something called somnambulism, sleepwalk. That is there. There's a state where a person is kind of semi-awake or asleep. So there are certain aspects of his consciousness which is not active. So in dream he walks. I mean, it's a paranormal situation. It happens. It's a mental issue, and people treat it. So monomatra janya asadharanartha vishaya vikalapaha sa eva swapnaha. Swapnavastha tasya evam vidha vikalpa pradhanatvat. There is a emphasis on vikalpa, uniqueness. It's very unique to you. You're experiencing it. Okay. And what is that susupti avastha? Susupti avastha is slightly different. He's saying susupti kale sakale viline vrittinam api swavishayatvad eva layaha. All the manavrittis, bahyendri vrittis come to an end when you fall into this dream state, normal sleep state. Then you get into the deep sleep state or dreamless deep state. Even the manovritti, mana and buddhis, which are maybe active in the dream state, they also come to an end. What do you have? You have nothing. They are in vijavastha, layavastha. They become encrypted. They are in sleep mode. They don't become absent. Huh? Because if they become absent, then you will wake up not remembering what we have studied today. So the buddhi and the manas and your hatred and anger and all these inclinations only enter into a deep sleep mode. That's it. Once we wake up, okay, all come back slowly. Certain things do, certain things don't. But they all come back. Vrittvile sati shikshma rupina vidyamanam api antakaranam lina prayam eva. That is what the Shastrakar is saying. Bhaskara Rai. So what happens is that when you are in deep sleep state, actually the antakarana vritti doesn't die. If they die, all our papas will be over and punyas will be over. No hassles. We are almost like liberated. We may not have to wake up. There'll be no karma also. No prarabdha, nothing. The whole file gets deleted. As good as liberation. No. The computer doesn't get, even if the computer gets formatted, the operating system remains. But in case of us, there's always loads and loads of encrypted files in the database. That is what travels from one life to another. Is the memory of our papa punya and our good qualities and bad qualities. Only this sthula sarira and the sukshma sarira, viyoga is death, sanyoga is life. Death means nothing. We just abandon this sthula sarira. The sukshma sarira travels forth. And when it comes back and again accepts another physical sheath, it's called birth. That is how Shastra explains it. So that is susupti avastha. So these three, that is what he's saying. So swapnaha vikalapaha. It's what? It is ideational. It's just product of a imaginary process, a process of imagination. Whatever knowledge you saw a dream, we keep repeating that in Vedanta classes, isn't it? There's a person who has broken into your house and he has a gun. You are frightened and you are calling 911 or 100 or 1112 in India, whatever you're calling, you are seeking urgent help. Now the security guys come, and then that guy, there's a hot exchange of fire between the police and that terrorist or that person who has broken into your house. You are scared, maybe there's a lot of bloodshed and stuff like that, and finally that person gets eliminated, and you are managing to run away from the house, and your sleep breaks. You're bothered thinking about where is my mom or sister or wife or sister or friend or whatever, or child. Where are you? In your bedroom. Anybody broke in? No, nothing. Nothing has happened. You are perfect. So in the dream, the person who has broken in, the gunfire, the police, the number you called, you are running away. All this is you. It's all your creation, isn't it? The rescue act, the attack, it's all you only. You have created all that. That is the dream state that we are talking about. Okay? So, whatever knowledge that you create, you accept or you have in the dream state, it's a creation of your own mind. Monomatra janyatvat. It's born by your own mind and within it. And there's nothing. There's absolutely no connection with the outside world. And then that we're saying that, what is that? He's saying avivekaha, during the deep sleep state, lack of discrimination. Why? Because this is a state of non-discernment. There is no distinction. You don't even distinguish yourself as different from the external world. Your ego sense has also vanished. Therefore, that is called avivekaha. That individuation, that I am X, this is this, that is that also you are not doing. And there is absolutely lack of awareness, so it's called Maya Sausuptam. That word Maya, why is it used here? It's not that Maya Shakti, Swatyantra Shakti. No, it's not being used like that here. Maya Sabda is being used here to put in context the importance of the word of lack of right knowledge. Is a kind of delusional observement in a state of in a kind of a spell. Like a person is given some kind of a sedative because he was hysterical, very emotional, something has happened. They're very depressed. Parents are very depressed because there is a teenage boy or a girl, or the boy has become grown up and then they were wanting him or her to marry somewhere, and then she decides to marry elsewhere. The parents have a lot of anxiety. They feel heartbroken. And then what happens is she returns fire. There's an argument. She now said, she's saying, I'm a grown-up person. You can't dictate to me. It's not India. Or if it's not India of your times, and you're heartbroken that my child is talking like that to me, then you turn his or daughter, the person she has chosen to marry, whatever emotional trauma she had, for a few hours, she is having a wonderful, quiet sleep. That's what he's saying, that mohamayam. There's a state of, but actually the reality hasn't changed. Nothing has changed. A person is a little depressed, he goes and buys a drink and he thinks it's fine. He's not fine. He's just avoided. There is a disconnection between the reality and the person. That is why the Maya Sabda is used here. Now, let's look at how the Shiva Sutra Vimarshan Kshamaraja is now describing these three sutras and making sense of it. Sarvasadharana Artha Vishayam Bahendriyajam Jnanam Lokasya Jagrata Jagaravastha. So that is called Jagrata Avastha in everyday life. That's what happens because we connect with the external reality with the help of our Jnanendriyas and the Karmendriyas. We engage with the external world. Whether you play, you accept something, use your hands or legs, whatever. ये तु मनोमात्रजन्य असाधारणार्थ विषया विकल्पः स एव स्वप्नः स्वप्नावस्था स एव स्वप्नः. And that vikalpas that are happening, that itself will be described as a dream. Swapnavastha, that itself is the dream state. Tasya eva experiencing a knowledge-like activity, because you are seeing there's some kind of an experience, and you also have the memory of that dream. You see a cat, you remember a cat. You see a dream, you remember a dream. But that dream that you saw is not outside of yourself, and yet you have some sanskara of that dream. The swapna, therefore, is very akin to anubhava, or an experience of an external object, very similar. And sukha dukha is also associated with it. Like, for example, you're playing a football match for one of these popular, you know, what do you call it? Like, they have these very famous clubs, and you're playing there, and actually you're dribbling and you're defeating one of these top footballers, whether it is Messi or Ronaldo or somebody, and you are scoring actually a wonderful goal, free kick, and you could curve the ball and it cheated everybody, it entered into that goal post, everybody clapped, and people are hysterical, they are all shouting your name. The kind of happiness associated with the dream, that also you had it in the sleep. And if your sleep broke, somebody woke you up, you get angry. Why did you disturb me? I was having a wonderful dream. Because there was some kind of happiness. All that is there, very akin to a Jagrat Avastha experience, except that there is no external reality there. Yastu avivek. And so abhavo akhyati, there is no knowledge, there is no naming, absolutely nothing. Evam etad eva maya rupam mohamayam so suptam. That maya rupa mohamayam. How does it happen? It's not that delusional thing that we see in Vedanta, that the samsara is essentially a vivarta, or a inverted appearance of Maya. There's a Maya parinama and appears real to us. It's like you see a snake in a rope and then you get scared of how poisonous that snake is. Actually, is a piece of rope. No, we are not talking like that here, because in the Jagrat Avastha, there is avarana and a vikshepa. You don't see the reality, you see something else, as per Vedanta, right? That's how you get misled. In the deep sleep, according to Vedanta, there is no avarana. There is avarana, but there is no vikshepa. In Swapna, there is vikshepa. But in the deep sleep state, you have experience of happiness, but you don't have Atma Jnana. Atma Ajnana is still there. And that's how we don't get liberation. Even though we have an experience of some happiness, this happiness is not backed by awareness of the self, realization of the self. That's one of the reasons we have to still wake up, because of the karma, and the pressure of karma wakes us up. We have to run to do things. However, here, he is completely using this language in a different way. Etad eva maya rupam, that deep sleep. Mohamayam, so suptam. Why mohamaya? Because there's a complete disconnection with the reality, internal or external. So suptam lakshataya prashangat ucheda. What is the uchedyayaha mayaya api so supta swarupam uktam. Now, this is something interesting that he's mentioning. By Susupti, what he's trying to say is that end of the day, you are supposed to go beyond this, isn't it? Because that is aviveka. Once you are able to defeat this state of delusion, then you can think about liberation, one step closer to liberation. So, what does Khemaraja say so far? All these words, that working state is that in which knowledge of the objects, you know different objects, which is produced in you with the help of your Jnanendriyas and Karmendriyas. So you have some solid experience and you have memory of it for later day. That is the waking state. In the dream state, what happens is that whatever jnana you are having, swapna jnana, it's not produced by your association or interaction with the external object, but by your own mind. Manomatra janyatvat. It happens within you without an external world. What does it mean? That this whole experience of the world that you remember was itself a self constructed world. That is a self constructed world. That self constructed world is referred to as Vikalpaha. Vikalpaha, that is how they are referring. And in the deep sleep state, what happens is aviveka. That means there's a complete awareness. You are absolutely not aware that you are sleeping. You are not even aware who are you. When you wake up, you somehow are able to make sense of some happiness you have experienced and you are being able to remember it. In sleep state, you can't describe it because you are asleep. When you wake up, you remember it, that you had a wonderful sleep. I woke up, I don't remember anything, I had a wonderful sleep. That's what you are trying to say. Therefore, that is called that avivekaha, that is deep sleep, susupti avastha. Okay. Now he further goes forward and says, Itham apicha idrisena api anena lakshanena, by these lakshanas, this way of characterization or definition, Tisrusu api, in these three states, Jagaradi dasasu, you have Jagrata, Swapna, and Susupti avastha. Teshu, Jagratadi avasthasu. Then what he's saying, Vairupyam asti iti darshitam. They are all different from each other. Tathacha atra yad yat swapna deshochitam prathamam avikalpakam jnanam sa jagara. Now what he's trying to say, you see, we are entering into, this is a very interesting thing. He's saying that before we enter into the deep sleep, tathacha atra yadya swapna dasochitam, swapna dasa, and whatever is happening there, pratham avikalpakam jnanam sa jagara. Yetu tatra vikalpaha sa swapnaha. Then where is there is no vikalpa, there is jnana without being vikalpa, which is not a thought construct, which is not a product of your own mind. That is what you call the waking state. And what is a product of that mind is called swapnaha. And then tattvadivechanam, tattva avivechanam sausuptam. And then not knowing the truth, you are sleeping. That is what briefly is described as the deep sleep state. Sausupte yadyapi vikalpaha na sanchetyante. There is no vikalpas in the deep sleep. Why are you calling it aviveka? Tathapi tat pravivikshaya. That in that tat pravivikshayam tathochita jagrat jnanam iva tad anantaram sanskara kalpa vikalpa rupaha tad uchitaha swapnopi astyeva. Now he's trying to say something else. He's saying that, look, when, this is a theoretical discussion. What he's trying to say is that when you are in your sleep and you're entering into deep sleep state, initially you experience a kind of a hazy, the experience you have is what you have in Jagrata Avastha. Then slowly you enter into a state in which you have something like dream avastha or swapna avastha. Then you fall into the deep sleep. Like, for example, okay, there is a beautiful book. It was very famous, also considered to be relevant to some spiritual sadhana, by that famous guy who wrote a lot of books on a lot of sedatives and stuff like that, Carlos Castaneda. He wrote that book called Art of Dreaming. Long back I read it. So he's saying, okay, it's very important to understand when you are entering in your dream, the dream state. And if you can manipulate it and take control of it, and if you can yourself, if you are able to dream your own hand in the dream, so you decide what you're going to see in your dream. And then he goes into this, that how this practice, this is an art, how you can practice to overcome yourself, to reconstruct your whole consciousness and stuff like that. But that's one interesting point, that which is relevant to our discussion today, is he's saying that there are these sandhya avasthas, the interchange points between Jagrata Avastha and Swapna Avastha and Swapna Avastha and Sushupti Avastha. That is the only part that I consider relevant to our discussion today. So what he's trying to say is that this threefold character is saying that waking, dreaming, and dreamless state. Okay? And the initial undifferentiated state of knowledge, that is what he's referring. That he's saying is the waking, because that is the Laya Avastha. And he's saying that even in that deep sleep state, you have vague awareness, then some dreamy kind of thing, and then complete loss of all activity. I mean, there's absolutely nothing, a complete blank thing. So he's saying that in the deep sleep state also, there is a particular phase of it. You can call it waking state, and then you call it a dream state, vikalpas, and then finally there is some residual stresses are there. Okay. Now he's going further and he's saying, Kingcha Yogya Bhiprayena. Yogya Bhiprayena Prathamam Tat Dharana Rupam Jnanam Jagrata. Now he's saying Yogya Bhiprayena. So this is for the common people you described. What is Jagravastha, Jagrata Avastha? What is Swapna Avastha, dream state, and what is the deep sleep state? He described for the common people. What about the yogi, the sadhaka, who is doing Kundalini Yoga or Patanjali Yoga? He's a meditator. He's a serious sadhaka. From his perspective, all these are differently described. What are they? He's saying, Dharana Rupam Jnanam Jagrata. You have Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. That is the definition of Sanyama. You remember in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, we had a long discussion. Savitarka, Nirvattarka Samadhi, then Savichara and Nirvichara Samadhi. Finally, you are having Nirudha Samadhi. Sampragyata or Sampragyata. Ultimately, you have the Nirudha Samadhi. Then you have you have different intermediate stages that we have discussed in the line of how Madhusudana Saraswati kind of has paraphrased Yoga Sutras for us in the Gudhartha Dipika Tika of the Bhagavad Gita in the 6th chapter. Wonderful, very long comments on each and every sloka. He's saying Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. So he's saying Jagrata Avastha is comparable to what? Dharana. That he's saying Jnanam Jagrata. Tataha tat pratya pravaha rupa vikalapaha swapnaha. Like for example in meditation, Taila Dharavata, you are meditating. Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi, you are meditating on it. So when you are able to repeat that same pratyaya, you are doing upasana, you are meditating on something, and you are able to continuously hold on to that, that is what is called swapna. This swapna is different from the way the common person understands what is swapna. This is from the perspective, this is the language of yogi. He will tell it, okay, in your meditation, in what stage you are today? He will say, no, I was in my waking state. He practices, and after 20 days you go to him, in what state you are today? No, I have already entered my swapna state in samadhi. That means in my meditation, I'm being able to repeat that sequence, that meditation on an object of my meditation. Grahya grahaka bheda asanchetana rupasya samadhi saushuptam. Grahya grahaka bheda, the Niruddha thing is now telling. Grahya grahaka, there is an object and there is a pramata, there is a person who is a meditator, and there is an object which is object of meditation. Grahya grahaka. The object of meditation, that is grahya. The meditator is the grahaka. Grahyaka. Grahya grahaka bheda asanchetana rupasya, and that sort of gets diluted. Subject-object duality gets obfuscated. It loses that sense of separateness. Then what happens? That you have samadhi, soshuptam. That is what called. Now in the meditation, he's saying, now I'm hitting upon the samadhi avastha. Iti api anaya Bocho yuktya darshitam. That is what is also mentioned in the language. Ataeva Sri Purva Sastre. Sri Purva Sastre means Sri Malini Vijottara Tantra. It's one of the most famous books in Kashmiri Shaivism. That book narrates all the sadhanas and how to meditate, and it's completely Jnanaparaka. Only the word is Tantra, but it is that Bhairava Tantra, Shambhavopaya. It is contemplative approach to self-transformation. And then he's saying, Sri Purva Sastre Jagaradinam Paraspara Anubedha Krito Yogi Abhiprayana Api. And then that in the Malini Vijaya Tantra now, how he is describing it, that is mentioned here. In Malini Vijaya, this is in the second chapter, verse number 43. And what is that verse number 43? Chaturvidham pindastam abuddham buddham evacha. Chaturvidham, there are 4 states. Pindas, and the padastha word now will refer to the Swapnavastha. Okay, and Swapnavastha again he is saying Gatagatam Subikshiptam Sangatam Susamahitam. The Padastha Avastha, dream state also. See, you know what they're trying to do? We are Chaturdha Rupa Sangyam tu Jnatavyam Yoga Chintakehi. You know, this is, and then similarly in the deep sleep state he's saying Uditam Vipulam Shantam Suprasannam Athaparam. And then finally he's saying, so we will get into it. We'll go one by one. Okay. So what is mentioning that in the Malini Vijottara Tantra, this process, it's a very interesting way of splitting it further. So the Jagrat Avastha is now split again into 4 avasthas. So if you make a table, I'll try to make one and I'll share it in the group. So you will have, so on the columns, you make 4 columns. First you write Avastha. So you make 5 columns. Then you write Jagrata, Swapna, Sushupti, and Turiya. Similarly, Niche in Avastha, you again write Jagrata and Swapna and Sushupti and Turiya Avastha. Then what will be the first house of the Jagrata in the row? Jagrat, because column top is also Jagrat. So there is a, then so how do you have it now? In Jagrata Avastha, then it will be split into 4. Jagrata, Jagrata Swapna, Jagrata Susupti, and Jagrata Turiya Avastha. So that is what you are splitting into 4. Similarly, Swapna will also be split into 4 ways of looking at it from the perspective of the yogi. Yeah? So the Swapna Avastha, again, what he will say, Swapna Jagrata, Swapna Swapna, Swapna Susupti, Swapna Turiya. And again, the Susupti Avastha, Susupti Jagrata, Susupti Swapna, Susupti Susupti, Susupti Turiya. The Turiya Avastha, Turiya is not there. Only 3 states are there. And Turiya Jagrata, Turiya Swapna, and Turiya Susupti. That is how Turiya, no 4th state is not there. So he's now doing a bit of hair splitting to explain to us what are the finer nuances of it. Very detailed, finer nuances of it, and that's what is mentioning here. So, in normal parlance, what we consider to be Jagrata, Swapna, and Sushupti for the yogi, it is Dharana. Okay. And then what you have the Dharana thing. That is what he is referring to as Jagrata Avastha. Then what he is referring to as Vikalpa or the Swapna Avastha, continuous flow of the object of his concentration. He is meditating on, let's imagine, Ma Kali. He is doing mantra ucharanam. Or is meditating on Amitabha Buddha, that pure land meditation. So he's chanting. And he has the image of Amitabha Buddha. Or Tara. You have the Tara mantra, and the white Tara or green Tara, the Buddhist person is meditating. Or Pragya Paramita Sutra, he is meditating and chanting. He's meditating on the image.